So it's one thing to uproot yourself, quit your job, move to Spain when you're 30. And it's a whole nother deal when you're 40 or 50, or if you're, uprooting your entire family. So this interview is with a friend of mine who did this when she was 40. She's now 45 and living in Alicante, and she has a lot to say about the subject. So check her out. This is Julia.
My first trip to Spain was in 2016, and I came here to study abroad, and I just fell in love with it. But I had to go back to Portland to finish my degree. So I went back, finished my degree, was totally depressed, and was like, I have to do whatever it takes to get back. And I found a program as a conversation assistant, and it's through the Ministry of Education. And so you come, they place you in a school. I requested the region of Alicante, but I had no guarantee if I would be near Alicante. I ended up getting a school that's just outside of Alicante, the city. Mm-hmm. And so it's close enough to commute, and I live in Alicante, and I'm super happy. So I've been doing that I'm in my third year now of that. After that, I have other plans.
That's so fascinating, because I just spoke to Eunice Reyes. She was also in the salsa community, and she also is here doing exactly that same thing in Valencia. Mm-hmm.
It's a small world.
It really is. You finished your degree at PSU?
International Development, and then a minor in Spanish.
So you definitely speak the language. You try.
It's still not like fluid, but I get around. I get around the city fine, and doing what I need to do is fine. But there's always a point in conversations where I don't have the vocabulary I need or to say what I want to say. Or, for example, if I go to the bank to do whatever, and they're talking at me a million miles a minute, and I don't know the words they're saying, and I'm just like, ah. So there's times where I still get really frustrated. But in general,
I feel the same way in English.
But that's the thing about learning another language. You start forgetting both. So sometimes I can't think of what I want to say in English either, and it's super frustrating.
What was it that you fell in love with that made you just yearn to return?
That's such a good question. There's multiple layers to that. I would say in general, what I usually tell people is I fell in love with the pace of life here. Mm-hmm. Like I felt like it's just slower here. I feel like Spain's kind of behind us as far as where they are and with capitalism and all of that. I mean, they're still trucking along pretty good with it, but they're behind the US. So there's still a slower pace and a slower mentality as far as taking time to enjoy the Mediterranean or sit down and have a coffee. And I don't know how it is where you're at, but one of the things I remember vividly my first year is I couldn't believe people actually stopped and sat down in a coffee shop to drink their coffees. And you never saw people walking in the street with a big old Starbucks coffee. Like it was just something you didn't see, because people sit down and drink and they talk, they have conversations.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big thing for me, because in the US, I was always working 2 jobs at least. I just felt like when I came here, even though I was in the university and working hard with that, I still found time to enjoy life. It's sunny in Alicante all year round, and I'm
so different from Portland.
Portland winters, my last winter there when I was finishing up my degree, I was like, this is the last winter I will spend in Portland. And at that point, I wasn't like, I'm going to live in Spain. But I knew I wanted to return, but I knew I couldn't tolerate another winter in Portland because it's just, for me, too depressing. And I love Portland. I mean, Portland is the first city that I've ever felt in love with. And I truly have a special place in my heart for it. But the weather.
Yeah, the winters can be brutal for sure.
For me, it's just not seeing the sun. Like you have so many consecutive days of clouds, whether it's raining or not, the clouds just get to me.
Yeah, my husband's the same way. He's exactly the same way. And so I just, I got to the point where I was like, we can't continue like this. It's just remarkable how even on a kind of a gray, rainy day here, his whole demeanor will be different.
I had to reprogram myself out of that. Like in Alicante, literally, you could probably count on 2 hands the number of days with clouds.
Yeah.
And even though I knew they weren't going to stick around for 9 months, we'd have a cloudy day and I'd look outside and I would just feel like, oh, not again. Because I'd get that same trigger.
Yeah.
And now I've been here long enough that like it rains and it's nice because we need the rain. We need some water here because it's really dry.
So what do your folks think? Your folks and your US friends and your...
They kind of expect this kind of stuff from me.
Says the girl with the red hair.
Yeah, she does. She's crazy. I think my parents have been supportive. They've always been really supportive of me. I think they were concerned a little bit, but they know I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I mean, I'm 45, so, you know, I do whatever I want at this point. I think it was probably been harder with my friends because I have a group of really good friends back home, and that's my tribe, you know, lady friends. And that's really hard not having that support here. That's something I miss a lot. I've made some good friends here, but they just don't understand me on the same level. Part of it is the language. Part of it is the history that you have with people, the history that I have with my friends back home. They know me since forever. Like we have so many memories together. So
that's such a good topic because I think that's something that some people don't consider, because I think it can sound so romantic to move to Spain, right? But that's a whole other reality.
All alone, it's kind of like, well, I'm romantic by myself, you know. And I think I'm really thankful for the technology that we have today, because like just being able to have a conversation like this and see somebody's face, and like when I talk to my sister and my friends, I see their house and their spouse will pop their head in and say, hey, and it kind of makes me feel like I'm there. It's not like a regular phone call. You feel a little bit more closeness through technology, even though we're still really far apart. But technology has been a huge help. And I think for a lot of people with the whole COVID and quarantine thing, you know, we've become much more connected through technology. It would have been way more unbearable. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, for so many people. So what was that like for you when everything shut down?
Pretty calm. I was at home doing my thing.
Okay.
I mean, I'm pretty chill, and honestly, I enjoyed the time. I enjoyed the time to read and cook and take naps every day.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know some people struggle, but I was great.
Yeah, I hear that. So,
but luckily, I didn't have I still had income coming in, and so I didn't have to stress about that. So for me, it was kind of like a paid vacation.
Yeah. So with the gig that you're doing, even though maybe the schools weren't meeting, you were still able to get paid. Yeah, that's great. God, what a relief. And back to your friends. So I'm guessing that there's a fairly sizable expat community in Alicante. So do you find that you connect with both the locals and the expats? Or
no, to be honest, I don't like being around expats. I feel like I don't know, like when I first came here, I just wanted to be with Spaniards and kind of immerse myself in that. Like I didn't want to come to Alicante and keep speaking English and keep re-experiencing American things. I wanted like Spanish experience. So I actually got really lucky. I made a really good friend. I actually lived with her through the study abroad program, and then we became good friends. But she's really outgoing and social and has a big network of friends here. So I met a lot of people through her. And so in that way, I feel like I was able to see like a real authentic side of Spain, which I'm really thankful for. So yeah, I don't have that very many American friends. I would say, well, American expats, I should say. I have made friends with, like, I have a good friend from Italy, from Romania. And so other people who have come here to live and start a new life, I've definitely connected with them because we have similar experiences, even though they're already part of the EU, so they have advantages that I don't have. But expat community, yes, but not Americans.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. And so do you see yourself staying in Spain kind of indefinitely?
Definitely, yes. I actually have done my partner and I did pareja de hecho. So through that, I've applied for residency. So I'm just kind of waiting to hear back about that. And that'll give me 5 years residency. And basically I have universal health care with that and all the rights to work as a Spanish citizen. I won't be a Spanish citizen, but I'll have the same rights. So that's a breakthrough for me because these last 3 years, there's a 3-year limit on the program. And so I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do after this year because I don't know if you've looked into it, but becoming or getting residency in Spain is pretty complicated. And you either have to be starting your own business and have a really good business plan and be really ready to pay lots of taxes, or have a company hire you and be willing to sponsor your visa, which most companies aren't willing to do if they can find an EU citizen to work. So it's a lot of work and a lot of stress and heartache. And I was like, I don't think either of those options are for me. But then my partner and I decided to do pareja de hecho, which is probably the easiest way to get residency. Yeah. And that's taken off like a level of stress for me. I have had more stress and anxiety because of visa issues, things not being clear, the information not being available, not being able to make an appointment. It's like nothing is clear. And this is one huge difference from the US that I really struggle with, is the fact that in the US, when it comes to those kinds of things, I did my fair share of complaining about things when I lived there, but we have our shit together in the US. And when you come to Spain and you try to go through these processes and nothing's clear, you can't get the same information from different people. Like you hear different things from different people, and it's a nightmare. It's a total nightmare. Every time I have to do something related to my visa, my anxiety goes through the roof.
Yeah. Oh. So, but you've got your application in, you're just waiting for...
Yeah, so at this point, I applied for the residency, which is called the Tarjeta Comunitaria, the 5-year residency card. And that basically gives me the right to work, healthcare, like I mentioned. Mm-hmm. Because technically, also, I don't have a job. Technically, I'm here as a student in a program, an educational program, and they give me a monthly stipend. Mm-hmm. So in the Spanish government's eyes, I'm not working.
Got it.
In the US, I report my income because to them it's income, whether it's as a student or not, but it's minimal. I mean,
right. It's 1,000 euros a month or something, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That's so interesting because I had last, I think September, October, I had seen this program and I thought, oh, well, that might be a way to get the foot in the door with some of the bureaucracy, right? So I think you get a TIE or you get a NIA or something.
Right, you get your NIE, your number, and then the TIE is the card.
Yeah. Oh, so, right. Yeah. Okay.
I survive fine. On 1,000 euro a month, I will tell you, I survive just fine. I pay my rent, groceries. I can eat out once in a while. I can do a little traveling, when we could. I mean, I feel like even though I make so little here, like my quality of life is so much better.
Have you had the opportunity to travel a little bit around Spain?
Around Spain, I did a ton of traveling my first year when I was studying here. Probably because I was here as a student and the idea of seeing a lot of Spain really intrigued me. A lot of my classmates did more traveling within Europe, but I did a lot within Spain. So I went all through the north of Spain, Galicia, Madrid, down south of Spain, Granada, Sevilla, and this whole coast over here. So I have seen a lot, which has been really nice because Spain is like 1.5 of Spain equals the size of Oregon or something like that. But within that small area, there's so many differences in the culture. There's different influences historically. There's differences in the language. There's different languages, as you know.
Yes, I know. I'll tell you.
There's so much to learn. It's not like when you're in Oregon and it's basically, you have the east side and the west side and there's some differences.
And the city.
Right. And those are differences. But within Spain, it's such a compact space. There's so many differences.
Yeah.
It's like every region.
Is there another city you would like to explore living in? Or do you feel like Alicante is
Now
pretty
living,
cool.
this is good. Yeah. I have sunny weather 365 days a year. The Mediterranean is right here. So I go to the beach all the time.
It gets
It
real
really
hot though, doesn't it?
gets hot. It's so summers get really hot. I like hot weather, but come August, it's pretty unbearable. And so what's happened the last 2 years is my partner and I have gone up to the mountains in the north. And so we'll go to, because it's cool. It's a little bit cooler. It's still hot, but it's not like Alicante. So we'll go north for like a week or two. And that way we kind of shake off the heat and then come back. And then by the time September rolls around, it starts cooling off again.
Yeah. Oh, does it? September.
Well, starts cooling off again. It's still hot. Don't misunderstand me. But August is kind of when it's pretty unbearable. Alicante is very touristy. Like there's not kind of like that rich cultural feeling that you get in some of the other cities. We have a castle. We have two castles.
All right.
One's a little nicer than the other. And then below the nice castle is a historic area, the Santa Cruz barrio. And that's like everything's made of stone. It's really steep. And then like all the little houses have the geraniums out front. And it's really super cute.
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah, we have the historic section that's nice like that. But then just next to that is what we call the barrio. And that's where all the clubs are, all the partying, that's the part I like to avoid because I'm past that.
You know, being in Spain during the pandemic doesn't give me the real deal on what it would be like to live here. So, you know, my concern is I eat dinner at 6, you know, I go to bed at 10.
Yeah.
And I think that most Spaniards start eating at 10 and then they go to bed at whatever. So do you find that you kind of mold to the culture in that way, or that you're able to kind of preserve your own little, I don't know, your preferences, right?
Yeah, I think initially the first 2 years probably, I molded a lot. I think now in the last year, my habits changed a lot after the confinement in March. And so I started eating healthier, exercising more, and so I'm starting to eat. So I eat dinner earlier because I don't like eating right before bed.
Yeah.
And then also during the week when I'm working, like I have more of the US schedule. I go to bed like by 10 or 11.
But then on the weekends, with your partner?
He's fine with it. He's like that too. He's kind of a health nut, sports nut. So.
Oh, nice.
So it's compatible.
Yeah, I just heard that Spain can be really loud, and it's hard, you know, it's kind of hard to get away from the noise, maybe of nightlife and whatnot.
So my first year studying here, I had an apartment right on one of the main streets that cuts through Alicante, and the noise was horrible. It was horrible. The traffic for one, the windows have no insulation. And then the barrio that I was telling you about, the party zone. So at 5 a.m., people would be returning and you'd hear them just below our building and they would be singing and yelling. And I would have to, that's when I started sleeping with earplugs.
What's that English word?
Those moments. And it was super noisy. And then when I moved in with my friend Lola, she still lives real close to the center, but up a little bit. So it was still a kind of busy street, but it didn't have the same party traffic that would come through at 5 o'clock in the morning. No joke. And then now I live like even farther out, and I'm still close enough that I can get around with my bike to anywhere in Alicante that I want to go, but it's a lot quieter here. It's fine. It's kind of like a suburb, I guess.
So did I miss anything?
One thing you did mention was the question, is Spain your home? And I thought about that question because it's a simple question. I'm like, well, it's a yes or no question, right? But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, it's not a yes or no question. It's really complicated. I feel at home here. I feel really at home. And if you had asked me a year ago when I was a little more bitter about the state of things in the US, I would probably say I'm never going back to the US. Like there's no place for me there. But now that things are changing, which easily they could change in another 4 years again, but it makes me feel a little more like, oh yeah, the US is my home. Like there's always going to be that. It's like your childhood home. You know what I mean? Like you have that connection and that history, and you know that home in a way that I know the US in a way that I'm never going to know that Spain. I'm going to know Spain in a different way. And the other thing too, that I was thinking in reference to your questions is that as far as the handle on the language, since I don't feel really strong, I mean, I have pretty good Spanish skills, but like issues that come up with the government or banking or medical, like I usually have to like sit down and study before I have an appointment so that I can like think of words that I might need to use. And so a lot of times I feel like I struggle being able to understand everything and communicate everything I want to communicate. And that makes me feel more vulnerable. Yeah. You know, where in the US, I know I can go into a bank and like, I know exactly what I want to ask and how I want to ask it and what I need. And I kind of know what to expect here, because I don't know if you've experienced this, but customer service is not a thing in Spain. It doesn't exist. In fact, I think they feel like the customer is an idiot. That's my feeling. And so I've found that if I have an issue banking and I go to the bank, if I don't know exactly what I need to ask and be pointed about it and make sure I get the information I get, they're not going to help me out. They're not going to like try to help me figure out what I need to know. Like I have to go prepared. So that's something that's different, because in the US, those kinds of things are easy. Like I know how to handle them. And here I still feel like.
Even with a Spanish partner? Okay.
One of the things too is that he helps me out. Like when I'm actually looking for a new bank right now, because I've had some issues with my other one, and
which one
tried to help me out. BBVA.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Good to know.
But I will say they charged me some fees that were unexpected, and they had changed the policy. And what I'm finding is that most of the banks in Spain charge.
Yes.
So things like that too are really frustrating to me, because I'm like, if I was in the US, I would just find free checking and it would be fine. Like, why do I have to deal with this? You know, but things will come up in my experiences that my partner can't help me with because they're special to me because I'm a foreigner. For example, I had researched a bank. I had researched ING actually, and everything looked really good. And I'm like, I'm going to open an account with them. And turns out if you're a tax resident in two countries, in Spain and another country, you can't open an account. So I got to the point of having everything figured out and decided on. And then they told me that. And I was like, what? Are you serious?
Oh, dang.
I'm like, but I have a bank account with another Spanish bank, but it's just their policy. So little things like that will pop up that can be frustrating in my process here.
So, which then makes me curious, because I think this is something that comes up for foreigners all the time. Obviously, you know, if you're applying for residency, you have to jump through the hurdles as they require them, or, you know, as you have to kind of guess, right, on some level what the requirements actually are. But I'm curious if, like, once you're a resident, can you just get an online bank? Like, can you get Revolut or N26?
I'm going to do an online account. Revolut, I haven't looked into. I was looking at N26, and that looked really good. My only issue with that is that in the future, if I need to, say for example, like I go on unemployment, for the government to make payments to me, it has to be a Spanish bank. It's not connected to those international banks. So things like that, things like if you get a loan, there's just certain things like that if you don't have a Spanish bank that's not connected to the Spanish system, you're out of luck.
Wow.
So I felt like in order for in the future things to be easier, that I just needed to establish an account with a Spanish bank, the one that's going to do the least damage.
Yeah. I mean, the fees are shocking. They really are. Yeah. So I feel for you.
So yeah, it's kind of and that was another thing is like trying, because of what happened with baby, I want to say baby Ubea, but because I didn't read over the contract super carefully, and it's also all in Spanish. So I feel like that was partly why the fees caught me or unprepared. And so in my search for a new bank, I'm like trying to read all the contractual information, and it's all in Spanish. And it's taken me weeks. It's taken me weeks because I'm like researching, and I'm like, I just want to make sure I miss something. I don't want to miss something. And then later be like, oh, that was a bad choice.
Yeah, totally. But have you had any experiences with the Spanish healthcare system?
No, I've had private insurance since I've been here. So, and I can't say it's been that great. Private insurance. This is another whole conversation, the difference in medical care. So everyone tells me, like Spanish citizens tell me, that private care here is a lot better than the universal health care because it's more like you'll get appointments when you need to. But this last couple of years, I've had a lot of weird health issues pop up. And so in the process of trying to get things checked out and testing, it's been kind of a pain. Like, I feel like even though we pay a lot for healthcare in the US and it is super expensive, the fact that we can like get an appointment like when we want to is priceless. And I also know that when I switch to universal healthcare, it's going to be even harder to get appointments. And also with the whole COVID situation, it's even more difficult to get appointments. So like when you feel like you really need to get something checked out, you can't always get it checked out right away. Something was urgent, I can go to urgent care, but still.
Yeah. I think my husband is under the impression that healthcare here is top notch, but
and honestly, I can't speak from experience because personally, I haven't used it yet. I can let you know next fall. I'll probably have a better idea.
Oh, adventures.
I want to make it sound scary, but
I mean, it's scary everywhere.
My frustration.
I mean, you know, what's scary in the United States is like we call our insurance bankruptcy insurance because it doesn't actually do anything for us if we just have to go to the doctor or whatever, because there's such a high deductible, there's a high out of pocket. But you know, the fact that you can be bankrupted if you go without insurance in the United States, that is really scary. I mean, the place is perfect. So, but I'm glad
that's what I've come to realize, that there are a lot of things I love about Spain and that I prefer about Spain, but there's a lot of things that are frustrating, but it's the same in the US.
Yeah.
Like they both have their advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah. Well, it has been such a delight to catch up with you.
Yeah. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
So Adnan and I had an opportunity to test out the healthcare system here, and particularly the ER, and we're fine. Everything's fine. We just had a little moment there. I just wanted to sort of talk through what the experience was like. It was a public hospital, and we took a cab there because we still don't have a car. But our landlords were kind enough to call us a cab. And that was, I don't know, a 15-minute drive. Then we were ushered right into the emergency room. He was taken right away. He's fine. And the guy who was checking me in spoke English, certainly well enough. And then I went to wait in the waiting room. So this is during COVID time, so I don't know. I didn't know when I would be able to see Adnan next. So then, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes or an hour later, two doctors, I think one was an intern, but came into the waiting room. They actually retrieved me themselves and brought me to see Adnan. And doctor spoke English, explained everything to me. Then I was able to stay with Adnan until, all of the testing was finished. So we were probably in the ER for about 3.5 hours total. The nurses were very kind, and so then he was free to go. Then the lady who checked us out at billing also spoke English. One of the things that I really noticed was that I didn't ever feel like I was just a sort of a number coming in. I just felt like everybody looked me in the eye, everybody acknowledged, you know, sort of humanity, if you will. And it didn't feel chaotic. It didn't feel, despite being the ER. So it was, overall, it was just a fantastic experience. The bill itself for 3.5 hours in the ER was 275 euros, which in the United States would likely have been between $3,000 and $5,000 easily, especially with all of the testing that they did. So again, it was a great experience at the public hospital here, and I hope that we can get our shit together in the United States and really get some sort of universal health care going. All right, see you soon.